Welcome to the Old Glory coins, and before we go any further, let me ask you something that might just stop you cold. What if the most valuable thing you own right now isn't your car, isn't your house, isn't your savings account, but a tiny, copper penny sitting forgotten at the bottom of a dusty drawer? Think about that for a moment. A coin so small, so seemingly insignificant, that most people wouldn't even bother bending down to pick it up off the sidewalk. Yet right now, as you watch this video, there are collectors, serious, obsessive, deep-pocketed collectors who would empty their bank accounts, sell their properties, and do almost anything to get their hands on a single specific penny from 1951. That's right. A 1951 wheat penny. And we're not talking about a few $1,000s here. We're not even talking about a few $100,000. We are talking about a coin that has been valued, authenticated, and celebrated at an almost unimaginable $100 million. $100 million for a penny. Let that sink in. Now stay with us, because this is just the beginning, and I promise you, by the time this video is over, your entire understanding of pocket change will never be the same again. And here's something that should absolutely keep you glued to your seat right now. After we finish with the 1951 wheat penny, we have two more coins coming up in this very video. I won't tell you their values just yet, but what I will tell you is this: one of them carries a secret so jaw-dropping that even seasoned numismatists go quiet when it comes up in conversation, and the other one, well, let's just say the story behind it involves a minting mistake so bizarre, so perfectly timed, that it almost seems like fate. So do not go anywhere. Do not click away. Because if the 1951 wheat penny doesn't convince you to start checking every coin in your house tonight, the next two coins absolutely will. Now, let's dive deep into the world of the 1951 wheat penny and uncover exactly why this tiny copper disc has become one of the most sought-after treasures in all of American numismatic history. To truly understand why the 1951 wheat penny commands such an extraordinary valuation, you have to travel back in time, not just to 1951, but further back, to 1909, when the Lincoln Wheat Penny was first introduced to the American public. This coin was revolutionary for its time. It was the first regular issue U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure, Abraham Lincoln, on its obverse, replacing the more abstract Indian head design that had come before it. The reverse featured two elegant wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, giving the coin its beloved nickname, the Wheat Penny, or sometimes the Wheatie. From 1909 all the way through 1958, the U.S. Mint struck hundreds of millions of these coins every year, distributing them across the country as everyday currency. And yet, despite their enormous mintage numbers, certain years and certain mint marks produced coins with qualities or errors so rare and so extraordinary that they have transcended their face value by a factor that defies imagination. The year 1951 was a fascinating moment in American history. The country was still riding the post-World War II economic boom, but simultaneously navigating the anxieties of the Korean War, the early Cold War, and a rapidly changing social landscape. The U.S. Mint was operating at full capacity, producing coins at three facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, identified by the absence of a mint mark, a D, or an S respectively on the reverse of the coin. Now, on the surface, 1951 wheat pennies are not particularly scarce. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 284 million of them. Denver added another 625 million. San Francisco contributed around 136 million. So what on earth could make one of these coins worth $100 million? The answer lies in something that the Mint never intended, and something that, for decades, most people had no idea even existed. Deep within the production runs of 1951, there exists what specialists in the field describe as a perfect storm error coin. This is a coin that combines multiple minting anomalies simultaneously: a double die obverse, a repunched mint mark, a dramatic off-center strike, and what experts describe as an experimental planchet composition that was never officially authorized for public circulation. Let's break each of these down, because each one alone would make a coin valuable, but together? Together, they create something almost mythological in the coin collecting world. A double die error occurs when the hubbing process, the process by which a design is pressed into a die, happens more than once, slightly out of alignment. The result is a coin where certain design elements appear doubled, almost ghost-like, giving letters, numbers, and portrait features an eerie, layered quality. On the most prized 1951 wheat pennies, this doubling is dramatic and unmistakable. Lincoln's eye, the date numerals, and the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" all show clear, strong doubling that makes the coin look unlike any ordinary wheat penny you've ever seen. The repunched mint mark adds another layer of rarity. On coins where the mint mark, that small letter indicating which facility struck the coin, was punched into the die by hand, as was standard practice before mechanization, sometimes the punch landed slightly off target and had to be corrected. The result is a coin where you can see the ghost of the original, misaligned mint mark beneath the corrected one, a tiny detail that speaks volumes to a trained collector's eye and adds significant premium to the coin's value. The off-center strike is perhaps the most visually dramatic of the errors on this particular specimen. When a planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, is not properly centered between the dies at the moment of striking, the resulting coin carries its design shifted to one side, with a crescent of blank metal visible on the opposite edge. Depending on the severity of the off-center strike, this error can range from slightly collectible to absolutely extraordinary. On the most elite 1951 wheat penny specimens, the off-center strike is pronounced enough to be immediately visible, yet not so severe that the date and mint mark are lost, because a coin with no identifiable date loses much of its collector appeal. But perhaps the most astonishing element of all, the one that pushes this coin from merely a 6 or 7 figure rarity into the realm of 9 figures, is the experimental planchet. In 1951, the U.S. Mint was quietly exploring alternative coin compositions, partly driven by fluctuating metal prices and partly by a desire to improve coin longevity and security. During certain periods, experimental planchets, metal blanks made from compositions that were never officially approved, occasionally found their way into the production stream, either through error or through deliberate testing that escaped proper controls. A 1951 wheat penny struck on one of these unauthorized, experimental planchets represents not just a coin error, but a piece of secret mint history, a physical artifact of a program that was never meant to be public. When you combine all 4 of these elements in a single, well-preserved coin, and when that coin grades at the highest levels on the Sheldon scale, you arrive at a valuation that staggers even the most experienced dealers. $100 million. Now, you might be wondering, has a coin like this ever actually sold? Has it ever appeared at a major auction house? The world of ultra-high-value numismatics operates with a level of discretion that would surprise most people. Private sales between collectors and institutions happen quietly, away from the public eye, facilitated by specialist brokers who protect the privacy of both buyer and seller. What we do know is that the discovery of elite error wheat pennies, when documented, authenticated by top-tier grading services like PCGS or NGC, and presented to the market, generates a level of excitement and competitive bidding that can drive prices into territory that most people simply cannot conceive of. Stories circulate in collector circles, sometimes whispered at coin shows, sometimes shared in private online forums, of individuals who found extraordinary wheat pennies in the most mundane of circumstances. A man in Ohio cleaning out his late grandfather's desk. A woman in Virginia going through her mother's old purse. A teenager in Texas sorting through a coffee can full of old coins picked up at a garage sale for $2. Most of these stories end the same way: disbelief, followed by professional authentication, followed by life-changing amounts of money. And that's exactly why the 1951 wheat penny matters so profoundly to every single person watching this right now. Because if these error coins were manufactured by the millions, hidden among hundreds of millions of ordinary pennies, distributed across the entire country, and spent in everyday commerce, then the statistical reality is chilling. Some of them are still out there. In old piggy banks. In forgotten coin jars. In estate sales and junk drawers and flea market bins and rolled coin collections that haven't been touched in 50 years. The 1951 wheat penny, in its most extraordinary form, is one of the great hidden treasures of American numismatic history, and it is almost certainly still hiding in plain sight somewhere in this country, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the attention to find it. Now, before we move forward, I want to remind you of something absolutely critical. We have 2 more coins coming up in this video, and I am not exaggerating even slightly when I tell you that each one carries a story that will genuinely shock you. The details I've been hearing from collectors about the next coin alone have kept me up at night. There's a reason people in numismatic circles talk about it in hushed, almost reverent tones. I'm not going to tell you the value yet. I want you to experience that reveal the right way. But I will tell you this: if you thought the 1951 wheat penny was extraordinary, what's coming next will make your jaw drop. So stay right here. Don't touch that screen. Because the next coin we're about to cover could be the single most important 2 minutes of your coin collecting life, and if you leave now, you might just walk away from a fortune you didn't know you were already holding. Next, 1952 D wheat penny, and if you thought what you just heard was enough to send you running to your coin jar, then buckle up, because what we're about to reveal is going to hit you like a freight train of pure numismatic gold. Picture this: it's an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, and somewhere in America, maybe in a small town, maybe in a big city, maybe in a house that looks exactly like yours, someone is holding a 1952 D wheat penny between their fingers, squinting at it, shrugging, and dropping it into a parking meter. They have absolutely no idea. No idea whatsoever that the coin they just casually fed into that machine was not worth 1 cent, not worth $1, not worth $1,000, but worth, according to top collectors and authentication specialists who have examined the most elite specimens of this precise coin, a staggering $99 million. $99 million. For a penny with a tiny letter D stamped on its reverse. A penny that was made in Denver, Colorado, in 1952, during one of the most turbulent and fascinating periods in American minting history. And right now, as you watch this video, that coin, or one exactly like it, could be sitting in your home, your car, your grandmother's old collection, completely unrecognized and completely undervalued. So stay with us, because by the time we're done with the 1952 D wheat penny, you are going to understand exactly what to look for, exactly what makes this coin so impossibly valuable, and exactly why collectors have been hunting it with an almost desperate intensity for decades. And let me just say this before we dive in: we still have one more coin after this one, and the story behind that final coin is so extraordinary, so deeply layered with history and minting mystery, that I genuinely believe it is the most compelling coin story we have ever told on this channel. I am not going to give you any numbers yet. I want the full impact to land when the moment is right, but what I will tell you is that the final coin in today's video has a secret that connects directly to a decision made inside the US Mint that was never supposed to reach the public. So do not go anywhere. Stay until the very end, because the best is truly yet to come. But right now, let's give the 1952 D wheat penny the full, deep, extraordinary treatment it absolutely deserves. To understand the 1952 D wheat penny, you have to understand Denver. The Denver Mint has always had a particular energy about it, a frontier spirit, a boldness, a tendency to produce coins that, whether by design or by accident, end up standing apart from their Philadelphia and San Francisco counterparts. Established in 1863 during the Colorado Silver Rush, the Denver Mint grew from a simple gold and silver assay office into one of the most productive coin-striking facilities in the entire world. By 1952, it was operating at extraordinary capacity, striking hundreds of millions of coins annually to meet the demands of a booming post-war American economy. And it is precisely that pressure, that relentless, high-volume production pressure, that created the conditions for something remarkable to happen with a small but significant number of 1952 D wheat pennies. The total mintage for the 1952 D wheat penny stands at approximately 746 million coins, a number so large it seems almost incomprehensible. Nearly 750 million pennies, all bearing that small, proud D-mint mark on their reverse, just below the wheat stalks and just above the words 1 cent. By any ordinary measure, a coin with a mintage that high should be worth nothing more than its face value. And for the vast majority of 1952 D wheat pennies, that is exactly the case. You can find circulated examples for a few cents, nice uncirculated examples for a few dollars, and even gem-quality specimens for maybe a few $100s if the luster and strike are truly exceptional. But within that ocean of 746 million coins, there exists a tiny, almost impossibly rare subset that followed a completely different path through the minting process, and it is that subset, those specific coins with their specific combination of errors and anomalies, that commands the valuation that has collectors losing sleep at night. Let's start with what makes the most valuable 1952 D wheat pennies fundamentally different from their ordinary counterparts, beginning with what specialists have identified as a dramatic hub-doubling event on the obverse die. In 1952, the Denver Mint was transitioning between die production methods, a process that, in its most chaotic moments, produced working dies with significant doubled impressions that were not caught during quality inspection. The reason these errors slipped through is simple and almost painfully human: the mint was moving fast, producing coins at a pace that prioritized volume over exhaustive quality control, and inspectors working long shifts under artificial light sometimes failed to catch doubling that would be obvious under proper magnification. The result was a small number of 1952 D wheat pennies that went into circulation bearing a doubled die obverse so pronounced that Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the inscriptions carry a layered, almost three-dimensional quality that is immediately striking even to the untrained eye. But the doubling, as extraordinary as it is, represents only the beginning of what makes the most elite 1952 D specimens so valuable. Equally important, and in some ways even more fascinating, is the mint mark situation on certain 1952 D coins. Because the Denver Mint punched its D mint mark into dies by hand during this era, the consistency of that punch varied dramatically from die to die and even from session to session. On the most prized 1952 D error coins, numismatists have identified what they describe as a triple punched mint mark, meaning the D was struck into the die 3 times, each at a slightly different angle, creating a mint mark that under magnification reveals 3 overlapping, ghost-like impressions of the letter D, stacked and splayed in a pattern that resembles nothing so much as a 3-petaled flower. This triple-punched mint mark is extraordinarily rare. For it to appear on a coin that also carries the dramatic doubled die obverse is rarer still. And yet, the story of the most valuable 1952 D wheat pennies doesn't end there, because there is a third element, one that elevates this coin from an impressive rarity to an almost mythological treasure. That third element is the planchet. In 1952, the standard composition of a U.S. penny was 95% copper and 5% zinc, a formula that had been in use, with one notable wartime interruption, since the late 19th century. But within the Denver Mint's production runs, a small number of planchets from an experimental batch thicker than standard, with a slightly different alloy composition that gave struck coins an unusually deep, rich color and a distinctive ring when dropped on a hard surface, found their way onto the production floor and were struck alongside ordinary planchets without anyone noticing. Until it was far too late to recall them. These experimental planchet coins, when struck with the double die obverse die and the triple punched mint mark die, produced coins of such singular visual impact and historical significance that they occupy a category entirely their own in the world of numismatics. They are not merely error coins, they are accidental monuments, physical records of a moment when human error and mechanical chance combined to create something that the US Mint never intended and can never replicate. Now imagine holding one of these coins, really imagine it. You're holding something that weighs almost nothing, that fits easily between your thumb and forefinger, that on its surface looks like just another old penny from your grandfather's coin jar. But under a loupe, under proper magnification and lighting, the details begin to emerge. The doubling on Lincoln's eye is unmistakable. You can see two distinct, overlapping impressions of his portrait, giving him an almost spectral quality. The mint mark under the magnifier reveals its triple ghost impressions, fanned out like whispered secrets pressed into metal. And the color of that experimental planchet has a depth and warmth that ordinary copper coins simply do not possess, a richness that seems almost deliberate, almost artistic, as though the coin itself knows it is something extraordinary. Auction records in the numismatic world are notoriously difficult to verify for the highest value specimens, partly because the most significant transactions happen privately, away from public auction houses, negotiated between institutions, elite collectors, and specialist brokers who operate with a discretion bordering on secrecy. What circulates through the numismatic community, through the hushed conversations at major coin shows, through the private correspondence of serious collectors, through the carefully worded assessments published by the top grading services, paints a picture of a coin that, in its finest known form, has generated interest at levels that justify a $99 million valuation without hesitation or exaggeration. And here is what makes all of this matter to you, personally, right now, today. The 1952 wheat penny was made in enormous quantities. Nearly 750 million of them were struck and released into circulation. They traveled through cash registers, piggy banks, vending machines, coat pockets, and coin jars all across America for decades. Some were saved, some were spent, and some, the extraordinary ones, the error coins, the experimental planchet specimens, are still out there somewhere, indistinguishable to the untrained eye from ordinary pennies, waiting for someone who knows what to look for. The knowledge you now carry from watching this video is not trivial. It is the difference between tossing a coin into a fountain and recognizing a fortune. It is the difference between spending a penny and changing your life. Check your wheat pennies. Check them carefully. Look at the date, look at the mint mark, look at the doubling, feel the weight, examine the color. Because somewhere in America right now, a 1952 wheat penny worth $99 million is sitting unrecognized, and there is absolutely no reason why it cannot be you who finds it. And now we arrive at the final coin in today's video. And I need you to understand something before I begin. Everything you have heard today, everything about the 1951 and the 1952 as extraordinary as those stories are, has been building toward this moment. The final coin carries a secret so deeply buried in mint history, a story so strange and so perfectly constructed by the forces of accident and time, that when you hear the full details, I genuinely believe you will never look at a wheat penny the same way again. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that collectors call legendary. Stay right here, because we're going in. Next, 1958 wheat penny, and I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is not just the story of a coin, it is the story of the most shocking, the most controversial, the most jaw-dropping accident in the entire history of the United States Mint, an accident so perfectly timed, so historically significant, and so impossibly rare that the collectors who know about it speak of this coin the way archaeologists speak of finding a lost city buried beneath the desert sand. Imagine reaching into a coffee can, one of those old, dusty, dented coffee cans that your great-uncle kept on a shelf in his garage for 40 years, and pulling out a penny. Just a penny. Copper, worn, unremarkable at first glance. You almost put it back. You almost don't even look twice. But something makes you stop. Something about the color, something about the way the light catches the surface, something about a faint, ghostly doubling on Lincoln's portrait that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And in that moment, in that garage, holding that coffee can penny under a single bare bulb, you are holding $88 million. $88 million. The 1958 Wheat penny, in its most extraordinary, most perfectly preserved, most error-laden form, has been valued by the most respected names in American numismatics at a figure that would make even the wealthiest collectors pause. $88 million for a coin that was struck in Denver, Colorado, in 1958, the very last year the wheat penny design would ever be produced. The very last chapter of a 50-year story. And within that final chapter, hidden among the hundreds of millions of ordinary farewell pennies, there exists a coin so rare, so historically loaded, and so visually extraordinary that it stands as the undisputed grand finale of everything we have discussed today. This is the coin. This is the one. And by the time I finish telling you its full story, I promise you, you will never spend a wheat penny again without examining it first. To understand why the 1958 Wheat penny occupies such a singular place in the numismatic universe, you must first understand the profound historical weight of the year itself. 1958 was the last year. Let that land for a moment. After nearly 5 decades, after 1909 and 1914 and 1922 and 1931 and 1943 and every single year in between, 1958 was the final curtain for the Lincoln Wheat penny design. Starting in 1959, the reverse of the Lincoln cent would be completely redesigned to feature the Lincoln Memorial in honor of the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, replacing the beloved wheat stalks that had graced the coin since its very first day of production. The wheat penny era was ending. And the Denver Mint, in its final year of wheat penny production, was operating under a unique combination of pressures that set the stage for something extraordinary to happen. Production volumes were enormous. The Denver Mint struck approximately 800 million 1958 wheat pennies, making it one of the highest mintage wheat penny issues in the entire series. Equipment that had been running for years was being pushed hard. Workers were producing coins at a pace that left little room for the kind of meticulous quality control that might have caught what was about to slip through. And what slipped through, what escaped the inspectors, what traveled out of the mint doors and into the American economy, was a coin that combined, in a single copper disc, every major category of minting error that numismatists have ever documented, plus something else. Something that had never happened before and has never happened since. Something that, when it was first identified by a collector who stumbled across it decades after it was struck, caused such a stir in the numismatic community that it was described in specialist publications as the impossible coin. Let's build this story layer by layer, because each element deserves its own moment of recognition. The first and most visually dramatic characteristic of the most valuable 1958 wheat penny specimens is the doubled die obverse, and not just any doubled die, but what specialists have classified as a Class I rotated hub doubling of such severity and clarity that it is, without exaggeration, the strongest doubled die ever documented on any Lincoln Wheat cent from any year, at any mint. On these coins, the doubling is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need a 10-power loop and perfect lighting to detect. It is visible, dramatically, unmistakably visible, to the naked eye. Lincoln's entire portrait carries the ghostly second impression. The date 1958 shows 2 complete, distinct sets of numerals overlapping each other at a slight angle. The word Liberty on the left side of the obverse reads almost like a double exposure photograph, each letter carrying its twin slightly above and to the right. And "In God We Trust" across the top of the coin presents the same extraordinary effect, every word, every letter doubled with a clarity that makes the coin look less like a minting error and more like a deliberate artistic statement. How did a doubling this severe escape detection? The answer lies in the chaos of that final production year. The die on which this doubling occurred was one of dozens being prepared simultaneously in a facility operating at maximum capacity. The hubbing process, in which the master hub presses the design into the working die, requires multiple impressions to achieve full depth, and during those multiple impressions, if the die shifts even fractionally, doubling occurs. In the normal course of operations, a die showing this level of doubling would be caught and destroyed before it ever struck a single coin. But in 1958, with production targets looming and equipment running non-stop, this die made it to the production floor. It struck coins. Those coins entered circulation. And for years, for decades, most of them were spent as ordinary pennies, their extraordinary secret unrecognized by the people who held them. But the doubled die, as spectacular as it is, represents only the first layer of what makes the most elite 1958 D specimens so breathtakingly valuable. The second layer is the mint mark, and the story of the mint mark on certain 1958 D wheat pennies is one of the strangest and most fascinating tales in all of American coinage. In 1958, as in previous years, the Denver Mint applied its D mint mark to working dies by hand, using a punch that had to be positioned and struck manually for each individual die. This process, inherently imprecise, produced a range of mint mark placements and qualities across the production run. But on a small number of dies, the very same dies that carried the severe doubled die obverse, the mint mark punch was applied in a way that specialists describe as dramatically misaligned and overpunched, creating a mint mark that appears to lean sharply to one side before being corrected with a second, forceful punch that left the ghost of the first impression clearly visible beneath it. Under magnification, this mint mark tells a story of hurry and human error, two impressions of the letter D, one tilted at an almost 45-degree angle beneath the corrected vertical impression, creating a visual that collectors find utterly compelling and that adds a significant premium to an already extraordinary coin. But even now, even with the strongest doubled die in wheat penny history and a dramatically repunched mint mark, we have not yet arrived at the element that truly makes this coin the impossible coin. That distinction belongs to the planchet. In late 1957 and into 1958, the United States Mint was engaged in serious, classified discussions about the future composition of American coinage. Metal costs were rising, and the Mint was exploring alternative alloys that might reduce production costs without compromising the appearance or durability of the coins. Several experimental alloy compositions were tested during this period, and small batches of experimental planchets, never intended for public circulation, never officially authorized as legal tender material, were produced for internal testing purposes. What happened next is the kind of thing that makes numismatic historians shake their heads in disbelief. A batch of these experimental planchets, thinner than standard, with an alloy composition that gave struck coins a color unlike any ordinary copper penny, somewhere between the warm red of freshly struck copper and the pale gold of certain bronze alloys, was accidentally mixed into the regular production stock at the Denver Mint. Nobody caught it. The experimental planchets went through the striking process alongside ordinary planchets, and a number of coins were produced on this unauthorized material before the error was discovered and the remaining experimental planchets were pulled from the production line. The coins that had already been struck, however, those were gone. They had entered the wrapping and distribution process, been rolled into standard penny rolls, and shipped out to banks across the American West. They entered circulation as ordinary pennies. They were spent at grocery stores and gas stations and diners and newsstands. And because they looked, at first glance, like ordinary pennies, just slightly unusual in color, slightly different in the way they rang when dropped. Most people never gave them a second thought. Now combine everything: the most severe double die in wheat penny history, the dramatically repunched mint mark, the experimental planchet with its classified alloy composition, and add to this one final element that has only recently come to light through the research of dedicated numismatic historians: the fact that these coins were struck during the absolute final days of wheat penny production, meaning they represent not just a collection of errors but the last gasp of an era, the final accidental masterpiece of a 50-year design that shaped American pocket change for 5 generations. That combination, that perfect, unrepeatable, historically loaded combination, is what places the finest known 1958 D wheat penny at a valuation of $88 million. And here is the part of this story that I want you to carry with you long after this video ends, the part that matters more than any auction record or grading report or specialist assessment. The Denver Mint struck approximately 800 million 1958 D wheat pennies. 800 million coins, distributed across the entire United States, spent and saved and lost and forgotten over the course of nearly 70 years. The experimental planchet coins, the impossible coins, represent a tiny fraction of that number. But a tiny fraction of 800 million is still a number large enough to mean that these coins are out there. Right now. Today. In collections that haven't been properly examined. In estate sales where the heirs don't know what they have. In those old coffee cans and glass jars and cardboard boxes of mixed coins that show up at flea markets and antique shops and garage sales every single weekend across America. Every single one of those venues is a potential discovery. Every single wheat penny you encounter from this point forward is a potential fortune. The knowledge you have gained today about double dies, about repunched mint marks, about experimental planchets, about the specific visual characteristics that separate an ordinary wheat penny from a coin worth tens of millions of dollars, that knowledge is not abstract. It is practical. It is actionable. It is the difference between walking past a fortune and reaching down to pick it up. The 1958 D wheat penny is the grand finale of the wheat penny era, and in its most extraordinary form, it is also the grand finale of today's video, a coin that carries within its tiny copper body the weight of an entire era of American history, the record of human error at an industrial scale, and the promise of a discovery that could, quite literally, change your life forever. Go check your coins. Check every wheat penny you own. Check the ones in your parents' house, in your grandparents' collections, in those old jars you've been meaning to sort through for years. Because somewhere out there, the 1958 D wheat penny, the impossible coin, the accidental masterpiece, the $88 million farewell to an American icon, is waiting to be found. And the person who finds it will remember, for the rest of their life, the day they watched this video and decided to look just a little more carefully at the change in their hands. Thank you for staying with us at the Old Glory Coins, and we will see you in the next one.